Hey folks, before we get started, I just want to let you know about my upcoming book, The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. If you're looking for a job, or you think you might be looking for a job in the future and you're trying to up your mobility and meet new people and things like that, this book walks you through the whole process. Go ahead and check it out. It comes out on November 20th. It'll be on Amazon, and you can find it as The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming to another episode of Adventures in Angular. I am Frosty.
Exactly.
Today on the panel, we've got a bunch of clowns. Let's start with recently returned from a 6-month hiatus in Europe, B-Love. Brian.
Hello.
How was it?
Good to be here. It was good. I will say that it's good to be back in the States, and the first thing that I have acquired is Dunkin' Donuts.
A Dunkies.
Yep, went to Dunkin' Donuts this morning, and it was good.
The Dunkies. When did you get back? Like today?
Last night at like 10:30 Eastern, but that was like 4 a.m. So like Eastern,
I got to get back for that podcast.
Oh yeah,
Got to get ready for this podcast.
That's right. You know it, man. Got my Dunkin' ready to go.
Well, I'm sad that you're back to normal life. Also on the podcast, we have everyone's favorite community member, Alyssa, and traveling mother of Mr. Milks. I saw
Mr. Milks.
Saw you at the GDE Summit this last week. Alyssa?
Hey, it is so good to be here. And sorry, my trip there was super brief. I caught a stomach bug and spent like 98% of the time in the hotel room. So that was probably the worst trip I've had since I started traveling. But I survived and I'm home, and that's all that matters.
Worst trip ever.
Yeah, it was bad. It was literally like, can I actually walk to the airport? Like I was contemplating that with my son. Like, you know, when you're that weak and sick.
Yeah. You're like, I need an Uber for legs. I need to borrow some legs.
I know. I was like, how close can the Uber get me to TSA?
Last time I'm eating Mr. Milks.
Yeah. Mr. Milks is like trying to...
I'm feeling so much better and glad to be here.
Also, lurking. You've heard him already lurking. We've got this special Shy Resnick. That was a lurky laugh. That laugh was a bit lurky.
A bit. Hello, everybody. I'm Shy Resnick, and I'm in the middle of reshooting some stuff for my Angular testing workshop. It's going to be free. And today I learned that everything I recorded today was blurry. So I want to basically kill myself now.
Oh, man.
So you have to redo it. That's awful.
Yeah, I have to redo everything. But other than that, hey, here I am. Let's talk about Angular.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Blurry Shy is almost as good as Real Shy. You could use him, right?
Hey,
I'm kidding.
Yeah. Okay, move along.
All right, and then we have our guest today. We got Stephen Cooper. Stephen, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Stephen, and I'm over here in London. I think I'm the only one. Am I the only one this side of the pond?
I think so, yeah. So, no. Shy. Lurking on the other side.
Lurking in London.
We're probably not that far away from each other then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a developer.
Look behind you.
There's no one there. Here in G Research, I've been, I guess, here for about 8 years now, doing Angular for about 4. And I've had a bit, I guess, of a more exciting year, doing my first talk at Angular Connect and starting to write blog posts and just getting going with all of those kind of things, and quite enjoying it.
Congrats.
This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give you full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open source Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code devchat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code devchat at Sentry.io.
What is G Research? Is you're researching gangsters? What is the...
No, it's, I guess the research part of it is in financial research. So coming up with trading ideas and selling them on to, I guess, clients who can then implement them and and run them in their own trading systems.
Nice. OGs.
Nice. OG for life. OG research. So you're that guy that gave the talk at Angular Connect then?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
you're
I am.
the guy.
I heard about you.
Yeah.
What was your talk about?
So the talk was called ngTemplateOutlets, the secret to customization. So really it was a dive into looking at how maybe people use, I guess, inputs into their components to toggle features inside a component. Whereas Angular provides us this mechanism of ngTemplateOutlets where we can pass in templates and inject, I guess, context into them as well. So it's this really powerful feature where you can remove all these feature toggles, pass in exactly the template that you want to be used, and the component can use that template and control even the data that's being passed into it.
Oh, that's awesome. Is this what we're talking about today?
No, we're talking about birds.
Listen.
This is the bird episode. Alyssa, we talked about this in planning.
We talked about it.
We talked about this, Alyssa. It's the bird episode.
No, we're talking about this. This is part of the NG research.
Yeah. It's the NG research episode about templates. It's about
goofballs.
Component customization.
Hey, did say clowns.
He did.
So, all right. So, Steven, for the listeners, because I obviously know the answer to the question, I'm asking it only to be nice. Most people know the different. Well, no one knows the difference between what you're talking about: component outlets and template outlets. For everyone who doesn't know, because I do, can you explain the difference?
So for the ngTemplateOutlets, the idea being there is that's not a directive that you can attach to any HTML element, and you pass it a template reference. So to define that template reference, you can, in your HTML code, write, let's say we've got a div and we've got some content in it, and then you can do hash and then give it a name. And so that way you've referenced that template. And then you can pass that into this directive where you've got your ngTemplateOutlet as an input. And then where you define that template, it won't get, I guess, instantiated where you defined it. It will get instantiated where you've used this ngTemplateOutlet directive. So it's a way of defining your template code in one location, but having it displayed in another. And that could be passed into another component, which is then, say it's got an ng container within it, and it's then applying the template in that location. ngComponentOutlets follow a similar pattern, but instead of passing a template in, you actually give it the name, or not just a name, the actual type of the component that you want it to instantiate there. So that's another way of, I guess, injecting custom behavior inside another component. And this is something which I've been playing with at our work and having some pretty good results with.
So let me ask a question. I'm going to go back to the first one. So they sound similar. ngTemplateOutlet, I pass it a template reference.
Yes.
ngComponentOutlet, I pass it a component.
Yeah.
Okay. So can I ask a couple questions about the first one? And then I have some about the second one as well.
Okay.
You said I pass a template to it. And in order to make a template reference, I use the hash, symbol to kind of make a template reference.
Yeah.
Do I also have to use like a special
ngTemplate
tag, like ngTemplate tag or something in order to make the template? Or how do I make a template?
Yeah, you're correct there. As in, you'd use that ngTemplate.
So teach me how to make one. Like, just kind of walk me through it, because I've never done that.
Okay.
What is this, a private lesson here?
Yeah.
Teach everyone, not just Frosty.
Don't teach shy. Teach me.
Hey.
Let's say we've got an empty HTML file, and at the top we'll say ng-template, and that will be an element there. Now, the good thing about that element is that it doesn't actually get rendered in the DOM. You'll see that it will just be turned into a comment.
Okay.
And then whatever you write inside that as a child of the ngTemplate, tag, is then the content of that template.
But it's also not rendered, right?
It's not rendered.
Okay.
No, everything within that ngTemplate is, hidden within that template until you instantiate it somewhere else using
What is the point of our ngTemplate, since he's just being turned into a comment?
So it just gives us a nice way of being able to define, I guess, a set of templates. So we might have a header there or a div and how we want to display things. And you can still apply your bindings in there and to data in your component where you're defining it, because it has access to that context. And so in one sense, you can reuse these templates as well. So you might write your template once saying, okay, this is how I want a person's name to be displayed. So you might have like their picture and their names. And you could define that in a template. And then say in your component, you're then displaying their name in multiple places. You could reuse that template in that way and save yourself, I guess, duplicating that code.
How does that compare to just using like a custom component? Like a lot of use cases, that I've seen is, people would, and let's say that example of, want to display like a profile or whatever it is, I would just create a custom component for that. And then that would be my ability to like write it once and then reuse it throughout my application. Like what's the difference between what we're talking about and this?
So I guess the end result is the same. You're writing it once, but I guess you haven't had to write any of the component, I guess, code to instantiate that template. It's all self-contained within, I guess, potentially where you're using it. So if you're then going to use that same template in multiple different components, throughout your app, then creating it as a component, it makes a lot more sense.
But if you're not, this is a nice way to get that reusability right at once, and I can use that all inside of a single component template multiple times.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
And so it saves you, I guess, some code volume in that sense.
Yeah. There is another use case where seeing like a reusable components library is used that to save you the trouble of, I don't know, extending a component or something like that. Just like mark your template and you get like variables that they supply by the context and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the really powerful thing.
Yeah.
That takes ngTemplates to the next, I guess, level in that sense, being able to pass in context to your templates. And that's where I went with the talk that I did at Angular Connect. I had this custom drop-down item. So there you could pass in a template, and using the let syntax, you can then have access to context objects. So within the select component itself, it can say, when I'm instantiating this template, pass it this context object. And so that context object will be, okay, I guess, which option it's currently being viewed for. And then when you're defining your template, you can say let name, they say, pick up that value. And the really powerful thing there is then you can use the actual value of the name and run it through, other functions that are defined within your component. And so you can add all this metadata at the component level, which knows about it. And your select component doesn't have to handle any of that complexity. So I think that's where ngTemplates and then using the ngTemplateOutlet context directed with it just gives it so much power.
I guess I need to go watch your talk because I've been in a code base where there was a lot of ngTemplateOutlets. And some of the time I felt like, why didn't we just do an ngIf on these? Because I felt like it was like, if scenario A, show the top part, if scenario B, show the bottom part. I was like, well, why don't we just use an ngIf? Like, there's clearly something I'm not understanding that I'm hoping to absorb from your brain through osmosis on this podcast. So what's the difference between this thing, ngTemplateOutlet, and just doing some ngIfs?
So if we, I guess, take this example of the select component. So say you could start adding some customization to your select component. So if it's just a list of names, say one use case might want to have an image, and so it passes in an image along with the name. So you could hide that behind a feature toggle so that some components, when you're using that, will show an image and other times they won't. And then I guess you might then have other features that you want to add into that display in your select component. And I think this is where, if you're using an ngIf, things can get quite, I guess, complicated and more bloated, especially as you get more and more specific, I guess, implementation details. So I think if there's just one or two options, then, an ngIf should be fine. But if you then want to give that complete customization and prevent your template inside your, I guess, shared select component, getting overly complicated, that's where you can just basically say, okay, this is too complicated. I'm going to delegate the responsibility of displaying this back to the component via this ngTemplate outlet. And that way, all of that complexity is limited to where you need it, and your shared select component can, I guess, remain completely clean and truly shareable.
That's the same as, like, think about it in like the use case of content projection, okay, with a reusable component. We need to project like content children, and you can basically say to the user, hey, you can inject here a ngTemplate, and this with, I don't know, this will be the contract that you can pass. Like, you can expect to get these type of variables into that template, and then you can like basically create highly reusable, take for example a data table or a data grid. So the cells itself themselves could be, I don't know, projected with templates that you control as the user of that table, but I don't know, over or the wrapper, which is the data grid item component, could pass you certain variables, like what's the content to display here, or what's the text in this item, or something like that. And then you can control like how this content is getting displayed without like messing with the reusable data grid component. Okay, this is one scenario I saw that they use ngTemplates. I think Can Do UI, I believe, or something like that, where I saw like the benefits of when to use that. It's like I don't know, any service where you can keep adding more use cases with flags. This is the ngIfs even explain, or just pass it. I don't know, a configuration, or just like do the inversion of control, right? And just like use it from the outside, and then you could decide on the use case. And I don't know. I hope it makes sense.
No, that was a good example. I like it. Yeah, the other time I've seen this is implementing like Algolia search. I don't know if you've ever used their search engine with Angular, but they have a thing called Angular Instance Search or something like that. And they do the same thing. So a very similar concept, right? Where you're defining that ngTemplate and you get that context kind of passed into it. So cool.
So the context is the contract, right? That you can expect. This is the API. Mm-hmm. So if you read the documentation, they can say like, okay, you can expect that with this context, you will get past like the text, or like, I don't know, the index number of this cell and stuff like that. And then you can do whatever you want with it and project it.
Yeah.
The one thing which I think people kept asking me after my talk was, can you get like autocomplete or type checking on that context object? And unfortunately,
that's a good question. Yeah, I don't think so, right?
You can't. And so then it really falls on the author,
documentation,
I guess, of the component to document which properties you can bind to. I think Ivy, it's because I know they're going to improve the type checking for ngFor, but I think that's been pretty much given a special use case. So I don't think it's quite going to get there. But it'll be interesting to see if there's any other, I guess, plugins for IDEs that might be able to potentially bake in some assumptions and get you a step closer. Because that would be really nice.
That would be nice
to do that.
Yeah, so that way when you do lat dash or whatever, you just like, boom, you get a drop down. Now you know all the context that's available. Yeah, that's cool.
That would be great.
That would be nice.
So let me ask another question, just to kind of walk through how this is getting used. So if I have a component, like let's just, imagine some donut component, right, where I make donuts or whatever. I've got maybe, let's say 4 or 5 template refs in there where I've done ngTemplate and I've given them, I've used the hash to give them all names, right? So one's foo, one's hash bar, one's half faz, one half, biz. So I got these 4 templates, and then kind of somewhere else in my template, I use ngTemplateOutlet. Is that correct? I have to pass one of those templates into the ngTemplate.
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's how it works.
I don't take that template and like pass it down to a child component. I just take the template reference and I pass it into the outlet. Is that what's happening?
Yeah. So wherever you've defined that, so I like to use ng container tags to apply the ngTemplateOutlet directive to, because then, the container disappears and you just get the template there.
Yeah, I like that.
So if that's all defined within the same component template, that's fine. But then you can pass these in as inputs to a child component.
So I can pass a parent template ref from somewhere outside.
Yeah.
I can pass that down into an input, and then that child component takes the template ref from somewhere else and renders it into the template outlet.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, so you can pass that in as an input, or you can pick it up as a view child using the name of that template. Yeah. So that enables you to pass in multiple different templates as well.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting. That's cool. Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting because when I think of AOT and at like a build time hydration, or like, I guess, decompilation of the template, it's interesting to know that it's compiling it in the context of the parent template, but at runtime, it's passing that template down into a child component to be rendered in. Like, I don't know, it's a little bit mind-bending when I think about that, the difference between runtime, build time of the templates, knowing that the JIT compiler is not there in production. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool to know.
Yeah, and this is where you get so much power, because when you're defining that template, you can access methods on your parent component.
Sure.
And the inputs to those methods are the data that lives in the child component.
Because the template, even though you're passing it down into the child, it's executing in the context of the parent.
Yes.
So the method the click event on the template, even though it's running inside of the child component, the click event was defined in the parent. So like the handler, that's interesting. It does bend my mind even harder to understand it though. But I think I'm getting what you're saying. So all of this, and then with ngComponentOutlet is basically the same thing instead of doing a template reference, I'm doing a component. I'm actually referencing a component token.
You actually reference a component. And so this way I guess it gives you another level to be able to, I guess, really reuse, the components that you are defining to then be used in these outlets. So I think a really nice high-level overview or something that you could do with this is, say you had just a grid with all your different, boxes in your web app. And then if you had standalone components which don't have any inputs or outputs, say, and if they take all their data, say, from a service, you could just drop these components in using ngComponentOutlets, and they would get instantiated, and they could all just start talking to their services themselves. And you potentially built yourself a drag and drop widget dashboard using these features in a really simple way. So I think the tricky part with ngComponentOutlets, and I'm aware there's some libraries to help you manage this better, is the input and output bindings, because there isn't really a clean way of doing that at the moment. You can pass in,
talk to the component instance itself. That would be kind of weird.
Yeah, so you can pass in an injector function or an injector that the component outlet will use when it's instantiating that component. And doing that, you can do things like where you pass in say you could wrap an ID in an injectable object and create an injector which just gives the service that ID. And so that when you're defining that component, its constructor will then take in that type which it's expecting, and then you can kick off lots of other data retrievals because it can then access any other dependency injected service. So I think it works really well when the components you're defining can access data from services or any other injectable services. But if you're wanting to try and do lots with inputs and outputs, that's not going to work as easily.
That's cool. Because I think largely people get topics that they've battled a lot with, and then they learn them really well. I think that's where the best talks come from. So I'm guessing you've probably gone through the dungeon on this thing, and you know the ins and outs. It sounds like you understand it really, really well, which is cool. I guess to kind of help us, me and the listeners and the other panelists understand, hey, when should we consider using template outlets instead of like an ngIf or content projection.
Hey.
Sorry. It was throwback. What are some of the like flags maybe we could look for, or symptoms that we could be looking for to say, I probably should think about doing what Steven's talking about?
So in its simplest form, if you ignore the context, using an ngTemplate pretty much does the same thing as ngContent with the projection. So if you're not going to start using context objects, then using content projection works just fine. But if you find yourself adding new inputs to a component to control what's going on in its template, then I think that's the major flag for thinking about, actually, can I just pass in a template and then provide context to it? Yeah, I think that's definitely the one where I've noticed in our code the most. It's really just helpful when you're creating shareable components that you want people to be able to customize how it's actually being displayed. So that's a really good use case for this.
That's
but
helpful.
then the other use case, which I'm beginning to realize more as well, is if you are, I guess, repeating similar chunks of template code within one component and then being able to use the context to just set some different parameters on it. That works nicely as well.
Gotcha.
So when someone wants to go ahead and dive in and start doing this, other than your Angular Connect talk, like does your Angular Connect talk have everything for someone to get started, or do you have other resources to point people to?
Yes, I've created a stack blitz for this.
Paste it in the show notes and everyone will be able to, it'll be on the blog post or on the, on the podcast site so they can see it.
Okay, I'll do that. And then that gives you a simple example. Well, simple is probably the wrong word. It gives you an example that demonstrates how you can define one component and pass in two different templates and get a visual representation of what they're doing. So that's a probably good way of playing around with these.
I appreciate you so much, and I appreciate this example so much. Thank you. Like, that is just brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. This is confusing stuff when you first walk into a code base that's like ngOutlet, ngTemplate. You're like, what in the... Literally, I've been doing Angular for years, never seen it. Why is it everywhere? It's helpful that this kind of a talk or stack blitz is helpful to be like, all right, that makes sense. Because it looks super foreign, to be honest. When it's your first time, you're like, what is it? Why is this happening? You know, so I'm glad that you gave me the symptoms to look for, because I'm pretty sure I've done the content projection like thing that you're saying where I modify what's being projected so I can affect it more. Maybe next time I'll reach to the template outlet. So that's good. Alyssa asked a question that I was interested in. So you gave us a stack blitz, and we have your talk on Angular Connect. Is there any other resources that people could go to kind of get some tangible understanding and learning around this?
Yeah, there's a few good blog posts on this topic. I think Nathaniel Basil, I think he's done some good topics on this. I'll add those links in as well, because that's where I came across it myself. Because I was Basil. Okay, apologies. Because I was using an ngContent, but I just couldn't customize what was going on and make that work. And so when I read this blog post, it just gave me, I guess, the idea of using templates, and just went from there. So yeah, I'll provide that in the chat.
So tell us the truth. How hard, on a scale of 1 to 10, was it to explain this without visuals?
Yeah, I think if you'd asked me to do this before giving the talk, it would have been a lot harder.
Sure.
I've been through this too many times in my head, so it feels like hopefully getting a little bit more.
Really impressed by how clean and organized you kept it without having any visual references. Bravo.
Yeah,
very good.
Podcasting, that's why it's tough. It's like, man, we're talking about stuff that usually we'd have a whiteboard or like an editor, and you're trying to convey that like, just with words.
Or, I mean, like even a piece of paper, right? Like something.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
or
a
even
good exercise.
Even hand signals, like, right?
Yeah, like this and then this.
You can make an HTML bracket. Like, on a podcast, you got nothing.
We should rethink the whole idea of this podcast.
All right, let's start over.
Oh, that's like Shy's whole day, right?
It's too blurry. Let's delete it.
Thanks. Thanks for reminding me. I need to jump.
RF.
Steven, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, ask you more questions on this topic, is there a preferred way for communicating with you?
Yeah, Twitter's the best way to get in touch with me. So that's @CooperDev.
@CooperDev. And you're not related to like Cooper S. Cooper, right?
No.
The JavaScript Weekly guy?
No, not that I'm aware of.
And you're not by any chance related to Stephen Fluen, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm not related to him. But I did get confused for him at Angular Connect 2018 because I asked a question about how do you manage like family life and then contributing to open source or doing all the extra work outside of maybe your normal office job. At that time, I think Stephen had just had his first baby. So they were thinking, oh, is this Stephen asking that question? But
So you, of course, went into signing autographs right away.
Yeah. The British accent was a giveaway.
Well, hold on. Because I've been with Stephen Fluen,
He has a little bit of an accent.
And when he gets around people with a British accent, he flips because he was raised there, and he flips over to his British accent.
Really?
Yeah, I watched him do it, and I was like, "What's that? What are we doing?" I was like, "Am I supposed to do it too? Am I supposed to do it?"
I thought he was doing it intentionally. I think I joined in.
Oh,
yeah. So he's talking to James Henry. Yeah, he's talking to James Henry, and he flipped. I was like, is this weird for James that Steven's doing this? Then
offensive.
I was like, I'm about to do my leprechaun impersonation.
And hopefully that's not weird.
Yeah, hopefully.
Not offensive at all either.
Yeah. And then, but then Steven's like, no, I was raised there. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then James walked away and he kept doing it. I was like, okay.
That's weird, but do
James
you think?
isn't here anymore, man. Anyway, so.
I had an employee once who had this bug. Whenever he heard an accent, he automatically mimicked it without even noticing it. He did the mistake of telling me about it. And once we had an investor coming in for a visit from France. And all day long, I started speaking in a French accent just to mess with him. Yeah, by the time, and he kept like, "Oh, you heard about the investor that is coming?
The investor.
The investor."
That was so good.
So he said like, "Oh, I didn't have. Hey, Shay, stop it." You know, my favorite part of this story, and I don't know if any of you caught it, was that you literally referenced a human being as having a bug, and you didn't mean a medical one. No. You're like, he has this bug, right?
Bug.
Like,
yeah, this is how I talk. This is how I talk. I have also a bug.
Well, he could have said an edge case. Friend has an edge case nerd. You know?
Is edgy. Is edgy.
Oh
what do you mean I'm edgy?
That's funny. All right, so everyone, Cooper Dev. My Twitter handle used to be JS Dev, so we might be related as well. We can't. There's no way to know anymore how we're all related.
Do you still have followers on JSDev?
Maybe. I mean, I just took a different Twitter handle, Aaron Frost, but I signed up for a fake account.
Remember? Didn't you? Yeah. We learned about that.
Yeah, maybe we should do a podcast about that. Do you think people would listen?
I thought it was interesting.
About
what is the podcast about? I'm confused.
What if we do a podcast about like 4 or 5 different ways to convince people squatting on your Twitter handle to give it to you?
Yeah. Okay. Because beyond money or blackmail, I don't have anything. So yeah.
Mine was a long game. Mine was a long game.
Yep. Until the rent came due, right?
Yeah. I just needed to wait for this dude to need some rent money, and then I was in the right position. And
so now you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Flatfile.io. CSV import is broken. I mean, don't you cringe when you think about how to account for messy data, edge cases, encoding formats? You have that comma or quote in the wrong place. And explaining it to end users, that's just a mess. Building and maintaining a custom importer is a huge time suck and a royal pain. That's why the folks at Flatfile created an elegant import button. Their CSV import integrates into any web app and provides auto column matching, data validation, and an intuitive user experience with just a few lines of code. Flatfile's pre-built SDKs and extensive configuration options make it easier for you to ship the importer you've always wanted. As a listener of this show, you can get a 20% off your first year with the code DEVCHAT. That's capital DEVCHAT. Get it at flatfile.io. Never build a CSV importer again. Boy, wouldn't that be nice?
All right, let's move on to picks. Does anyone want to kick the tires on the picks?
I can kick something. I have 2 picks. One is, like I mentioned, testangular.com. It's going to be on November 6th. I'm opening up my free workshop, testing workshop, reopen it for a limited time. So check it out and register to get notified on testangular.com. I will put a link. And my other pick is called One Strange Rock, and it's a Netflix series which talks about the Earth from the point of view of astronauts who were in space. And they had the chance to look at our planet and realize a bunch of things that from here you cannot see. So it's an amazing TV show. Very beautiful and very teaches you a lot of things. So check it out as well. So it's called One Strange Rock.
Yeah, it's great. Will Smith narrates. It's great. I love that show. So I'll go next. I was at an event this week with Alyssa, and Brian would have been there, and Shai would have been there if they weren't on speaking hiatuses due to other things. But it was at Google, and they said they were going to have a keynote from someone who was in the NASA program. And I was like, it sounds all right. I'll go. Why not? I'm here. I might as well not go and stay in the hall. So I went. Blew my mind, the talk, to be honest. So the speaker's name is Garrett Reisman, one of the most charismatic speakers I've listened to in like a really long time. He was just a short person who everyone said, you're too short to be an astronaut. And he talked about a couple experiences where he got bullied by the other astronauts in training, and then ended up spending more time in space than the bullies did. And he was just so inspirational. Now he works with
Tesla. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
With just such a good speaker. I had so much fun listening to him and his take on life and how to not give up and how to just keep going and just all the things he's accomplished despite being too short to do something really hard. And it was cool. I really, really, really liked that talk. I'm gonna pick another thing at this point in time. And I'm saying that because I wanted to say that. I wasn't coerced. And so someone in the community asked the ngComp team for something that no one's ever asked before. They wanted to see talk submissions that have been accepted in the past. They just wanted to see what did it look like? Like, what did people submit that actually got picked? Like, what does a successful talk submission look like? So we reached out to speakers from the past and said, hey, can we share your submission? And a lot of them said yes. And so go check out our blog and check out our list newsletter. It's actually going to show you a list of some speakers who got picked in the past and give you an example of this is what was successful in the past to maybe give you an idea of how you might want to craft your submissions, if that makes any sense. So check out that latest publication from ngConf, either on our blog or on our latest email. So that's my second pick.
How do you sign up for that newsletter?
Just go to ng-conf.org and subscribe for updates.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks. Brian, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I didn't really think about this. I guess my 2 picks are just being back in the US is great. It's really nice being in a country where people speak your first language and you're not constantly having to think about how do I communicate, I want a big coffee or a large coffee or like using your hands to gesture everything.
Like it's literally all the coffee you have.
Yeah. Sometimes you ask for something and you're like, oh, I want this one. And then you don't get that. And you're like, but you're like, I thought I communicated this clearly, but
I used the right hand signals.
Like you didn't get what I was saying.
I will order a hamburger.
Yeah, there's just something about being back. You know what I mean? I guess that comfort of your own culture. Definitely, I guess that's my pick. Not that traveling isn't amazing and fun and awesome. And then my other pick is I've been playing a lot of Zelda Breath of the Wild lately, and was on a flight last night for 8 hours and played pretty much for 8 hours. So it's a fantastic game. So if you're into, it's on Nintendo Switch, and it came out, I want to say like a year ago. So this is nothing new, but it's just a great game. So check it out.
Alyssa.
Yeah. So my 6-month-old baby, he's got to be obviously my pick. He
Milk?
Mr. Milks.
Wait, can I ask why he's called Mr. Milks? Like I've heard
that is
this,
all,
and
that's all he cares about, Brian. Is
that's his life. Mr. Milks.
I thought he had a beard. I imagine a baby with a beard with milk on the beard.
Milk kind of pouring down.
He needs to get one. That is definitely on it. No, so we got him a Goku outfit for Halloween because we are huge Dragon Ball fans. I guess my second pick is Destiny 2, their latest DLC, Shadowkeep. I got to get into the raid last night for a couple hours with my friends, and we only got the first 2 encounters done, but it was still a blast. So if you have been holding out, I definitely think you won't be disappointed with this DLC. So,
Nice. That sounds cool. I'm always jealous of you guys when you talk about your video games you play.
Why? Why you know games?
Why you know game? I don't know. I have 5 kids, so anytime I like take a breath and I'm like, hey, no one's talked to me in 25 seconds, a kid shows up. So there's no time.
Yeah, Lisa, you just wait.
You're right. He's not moving yet. So
Once they get mobile.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for sharing the game stuff. It keeps the rest of us, we live the games through proxy. So I appreciate it.
Like you shared the GDE summit. Thank you for the big FOMO.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
I'm trying to share it.
It looked like fun, and the pick was cool.
That was cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
All right, Stephen.
I think my first pick would be visiting museums that are next to you. So I worked in London for ages, and the British Museum is literally a 5-minute walk, but I've never been into it.
And it's free.
And it's free. You can make a donation, but it is free.
Yeah.
And so like I can go in my lunch break. So I started doing that, trying to cover a floor each day and seeing some of these incredible artifacts and the pharaohs and all the Egyptian mummies. And so there's this, I think it's probably part of the problem where if you work somewhere, you're just always in and out of the city, but actually taking some time to see what's around you and appreciate that is it's eye-opening. It's quite enjoyable.
That's wonderful.
When I was there was a big, this is like 2 or 3 years ago, there was a big Middle Eastern display. Is there a new display that's on, or is it still?
I think it's to do with Troy and the and the Greeks now is their main display. So
I really love that pick, Stephen, and it really resonates for me and my husband right now because we have been in this house for about a year now, and we still haven't hung anything on the walls because we're constantly living in a state of, we're probably going to move soon anyways, because it's always just on our, it's always an availability for us. And so we have extenuating circumstances, but we've recently decided that even if we're only going to be in a place for 6 months, that we need to basically be in it. Does that make sense? And so we want to kind of go all in for not just the house, but the city as well, right? We're not just going to be we're not really here. We want to start living like we are, even if it's just for a little bit. So I love that pick about the museums. It's really neat.
Yeah, it's a great pick. It's interesting how you live in a place, right? We were in Denver for 5 years, and we had to once we realized, we're going to be leaving, we had to cram in all the stuff that we didn't do over those 5 years. So we're we got to go to the history museum. We got to go to this. But when you're in a place for a weekend, you do all that stuff. So that's a great pick. I love it.
That's awesome. Well, Stephen, appreciate your time, your preparation, all that you do for the community, sharing your knowledge. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for leading the Angular team, the DevRel.
Yeah.
You do a great job.
Good luck on Ivy.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Is that shipping, by the way? Are we getting that?
Can we get a promise, Steven?
Can we get a date?
Not from me.
he's like, I'm not touching that.
That was
It is Steven
spot
then.
on.
It is Steven.
Yeah.
It is
He's not
Steven.
committing.
Yeah.
He's not committing.
That was a perfect Steven fluent.
It'll be ready when it's ready.
All right.
Oh.
Panelists, thanks for coming. And to the listeners, I will say we'll see you next time. Thank you. All right. Adventures in Angular is a devchat.tv production made in partnership with Hero Devs. Hero Devs is a group of Angular experts who can help your team code like true developer heroes. If your team needs an Angular expert, reach out to Aaron at hero.dev today.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com to learn more.